Have you ever heard someone say that an ancient prophecy predicted the end of the world? That feeling when your friend confidently explains how the Mayans knew exactly when humanity would face its doom, or how Nostradamus predicted the rise of Hitler? We've all been there, nodding along, maybe even feeling that chill down our spine as we wonder if ancient seers really could peer through time. I mean, what if they really knew something we don't? What if those dusty scrolls and weathered stone tablets actually hold warnings about our future that we're ignoring? Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of ancient prophecies that supposedly foretold humanity's end, and I promise, by the end of this video, you'll never look at these predictions the same way again. Let's start with something many of us remember, the infamous 2012 Mayan apocalypse prediction. Remember that? The media frenzy, the doomsday preppers, the Hollywood movie? Millions of people genuinely believed that December 21st, 2012, marked the end of the Mayan calendar and therefore the end of the world. The truth? The Mayan calendar didn't actually end there at all. It simply completed one cycle and began another, much like our own calendar ends on December 31st and starts fresh on January 1st. The Mayans never predicted an apocalypse. They were actually celebrating what they saw as the beginning of a new era. What's even more fascinating is that Mayan descendants in Guatemala and Mexico were completely bewildered by Western panic, as they had been planning celebrations for the new calendar cycle, not preparing for doomsday. Now let's talk about Nostradamus, perhaps the most famous prophet of all time. His cryptic quatrains from the 16th century have been interpreted to predict everything from the rise of Hitler to the 9/11 attacks. But here's what most people don't realize. Nostradamus deliberately wrote his predictions in such vague, metaphorical language that they can be retrofitted to match almost any significant event after it has already happened. The famous quatrain supposedly predicting Hitler mentions Hister, which was actually the Latin name for the Danube River, not a misspelling of Hitler. When you read his original texts without the lens of modern interpretations, you'll find they're poetic, abstract, and intentionally ambiguous, perfect for creative reinterpretation centuries later. Speaking of misinterpreted prophecies, let's examine the Book of Revelation, often cited as predicting the end times. What many don't realize is that biblical scholars widely agree that Revelation was written as political commentary about the Roman Empire's persecution of early Christians. It was coded language speaking to contemporary events, not a literal forecast of events thousands of years in the future. The mark of the beast that many modern interpreters claim will be microchips or barcodes. Most historians believe it was a reference to Roman coins bearing the emperor's image that Christians were forced to use in commerce. Context completely changes our understanding of these ancient texts. One of the most persistent doomsday myths involves the famous Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece. While the oracle did make prophecies, there's no historical record of her predicting a specific end of humanity. What's fascinating is how the oracle actually worked. Priestesses would inhale ethylene gas that seeped naturally from fissures in the rock, entering an altered state of consciousness. Their cryptic utterances were then interpreted by male priests who translated them into more formal prophecies. So those world-ending prophecies attributed to the oracle, they're mostly fictional inventions of much later times. Let's take a journey to ancient Egypt, where many believe the Great Pyramid of Giza contains prophetic measurements foretelling humanity's timeline. According to this theory, each inch of the pyramid's internal passages represents a year of human history, culminating in a grand chamber that marks our extinction. The reality? This theory was invented in the 1800s by Charles Piazzi Smith, a pyramidologist with no archaeological training. Modern measurements have thoroughly debunked his calculations, and no Egyptian texts support the idea that the pyramids were built as prophetic calendars. They were tombs, engineering marvels certainly, but not cosmic timekeepers. Let's take a quick pause here. I can see you might be feeling a bit disappointed right now. That moment when you realize something fascinating you've believed might not be entirely accurate. It can be quite jarring, can it? Have you ever shared one of these ancient prophecies with friends, only to wonder now if you were spreading misinformation? I'd love to hear which of these revelations surprised you the most. Drop a comment below with, I can't believe our number wasn't true. Your insights help our community discover which historical myths are the most pervasive, and honestly, we're all learning together here. Now let's continue our journey through history's most misunderstood predictions. Now let's talk about the prophecies of the Hopi, a Native American tribe often credited with predicting environmental catastrophe and humanity's potential extinction. While the Hopi do have prophetic traditions that speak of different worlds and ages of humanity, many of the specific Hopi prophecies circulating online were actually created or heavily modified in the New Age movement of the 1960s and 70s. Authentic Hopi elders have repeatedly spoken out against these misrepresentations, explaining that their traditional teachings are being taken out of context or simply invented by non-Hopi writers. The real Hopi prophecies are closely guarded spiritual teachings, not the doomsday predictions that have been commercialized. Moving to the east, let's examine the Hindu concept of Kali Yuga, often described as the final dark age before the destruction and renewal of the world. Many internet sources claim we're in the final stages of Kali Yuga, with humanity's end just around the corner. However, according to traditional Hindu chronology, we're only about 5,000 years into Kali Yuga, which is said to last 432,000 years. Even if you believe in this cyclical view of time, we're nowhere near the end. We're actually just getting started. This misunderstanding comes from cherry-picking aspects of Hindu cosmology without understanding its vast timescales. Have you heard of the prophecies of Mother Shipton, the 16th century English prophetess who supposedly predicted everything from the internet to climate change? The problem is, most of her famous prophecies were actually written in 1862, more than 3 centuries after her death. Charles Hindley, a Victorian publisher, admitted to fabricating most of the prophecies attributed to her. The real Mother Shipton, if she existed at all, left no written records of her predictions. This is a perfect example of how ancient prophecies are often modern creations backdated to give them more credibility. Let's look at Isaac Newton. Yes, the same Newton who gave us the laws of motion. Few people know he was obsessed with biblical prophecy and predicted the world would end no earlier than 2060. However, Newton wasn't claiming special prophetic powers. He was using mathematical calculations based on his interpretation of biblical passages. What's fascinating is that Newton repeatedly revised his calculations and stressed that his intention was not to predict doomsday, but to put an end to what he saw as irresponsible predictions of imminent apocalypse in his own time. Ironically, his attempt to discourage doomsday predictions has been transformed into yet another doomsday prediction. Now for one of my favorites, the prophecies of Enoch, supposedly written before the biblical flood, but mysteriously absent from most Bibles. The Book of Enoch does contain apocalyptic visions, but it wasn't some suppressed secret text as many claim. It was well known in ancient times, but simply wasn't considered canonical by most Jewish and Christian authorities. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is actually the only major Christian denomination that includes it in their Bible. The lost prophecies of Enoch that circulate online often bear little resemblance to the actual ancient text, instead reflecting modern apocalyptic concerns. The WebBot project is a more modern prophetic system that supposedly predicted major world events by tracking changes in language patterns across the internet. Its creators claimed it foresaw the 2008 financial crisis and various natural disasters. However, when examined closely, the predictions were either so vague they could apply to numerous events or were only identified as hits after events had already occurred. The WebBot has made numerous specific predictions that failed to materialize, but those misses tend to be forgotten while the hits are remembered. A perfect example of confirmation bias. Moving to East Asia, the I Ching or Book of Changes is an ancient Chinese divination text that some claim contains coded messages about humanity's future. While the I Ching is a genuine ancient text used for thousands of years, it was designed as a system for personal reflection and decision-making, not as a tool for predicting global events or humanity's extinction. The apocalyptic interpretations of the I Ching largely come from Terence McKenna's time-wave zero theory from the 1970s, which used a mathematical algorithm supposedly derived from the I Ching to predict the end of time in 2012. conveniently matching the misinterpreted Mayan calendar end date. This theory has been thoroughly debunked by mathematicians and scholars of Chinese philosophy. Let's talk about Merlin, not the wizard of Arthurian legend, but the supposed author of prophecies known as the Prophecies of Merlin. These medieval texts have been interpreted by some to predict modern disasters and humanity's eventual demise. The reality? These prophecies were actually written by Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century as part of his History of the Kings of Britain. They weren't ancient predictions but contemporary political commentary disguised as prophecy to avoid censorship. Geoffrey essentially invented Merlin as we know him today, along with many of his prophecies. I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so many prophecies have been debunked, but what about the ones that seem to accurately predict modern events? Here's the fascinating psychological mechanism at work. We humans excel at finding patterns, even where none exist. When we look at vague, poetic language written centuries ago, our minds naturally connect it to events we know are significant. This is called retroactive clairvoyance, or post-diction, the opposite of prediction. We don't remember the thousands of failed prophecies, only the few that seem to hit the mark by coincidence or creative interpretation. Now, I'm not saying ancient peoples had no wisdom to offer us. Quite the contrary. Many ancient civilizations made remarkably accurate predictions about astronomical events, seasonal changes, and human behavior patterns. The Maya, for instance, calculated the lunar cycle to within seconds of its actual value. But there's a crucial difference between scientific observation-based predictions and sweeping prophecies about humanity's distant future. One is based on careful observation and pattern recognition, the other on speculation and often political or religious motivations. Let's take a moment to consider why apocalyptic prophecies remain so appealing to us, even in our scientific age. Psychologists suggest they fulfill several human needs. They provide simple explanations for a complex world, offer a sense of special knowledge, we know what others don't, and paradoxically, give us a sense of control over the uncontrollable. There's also something strangely comforting about believing we live in special times, the culmination of history, rather than just being one more generation in humanity's long story. These psychological factors explain why end-time prophecies have existed in virtually every culture throughout history, and why they'll likely continue long into the future. The Sibylline Oracles, a collection of prophetic utterances attributed to female seers called Sibyls, are often cited as containing predictions of modern disasters. What many don't realize is that these texts were continuously edited and added to between the 2nd century BCE and the 7th century CE, with Christian writers inserting their own prophecies to make it seem as if pagan seers had predicted Christian theology. This is a common pattern with prophetic texts. They're often modified over time to increase their apparent accuracy, creating an illusion of prophetic power. So what about those prophecies that supposedly predicted specific modern events with uncanny accuracy? Let's take the famous example of a quatrain by Nostradamus, often cited as predicting the Great Fire of London in 1666. The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by fire in the year 66. Sounds impressively specific, right? The problem is, this translation is heavily manipulated from the original French, which makes no specific mention of London. This is a common pattern. Translations of ancient prophecies are often subtly altered to increase their apparent accuracy. You might be wondering about the prophecies of ancient India, particularly those found in the Puranas, which some claim foretold our modern technological age and eventual collapse. While these texts do describe a degenerate age where humans become smaller, live shorter lives, and experience social breakdown, these descriptions were meant to reflect the Hindu cyclical view of time, not specific predictions of our particular era. Similar Dark Age descriptions appear in many ancient cultures and typically reflect anxiety about social change rather than genuine prophecy. Let's look at the famous prophecy of Pope Leo XIII, who supposedly had a vision in 1884 that Satan would be given 100 years to destroy the church. This has been interpreted by some to mean the 20th century would see humanity's moral collapse, leading to our extinction. However, there's no contemporary documentation of this vision. The earliest mention comes decades later. This pattern of ancient prophecies actually being much more recent inventions is remarkably common in the world of apocalyptic prediction. Now, for something you may have heard recently, the supposed prophecies of Baba Vanga, the blind Bulgarian mystic who allegedly predicted 9/11, Brexit, and other major events before her death in 1996. Her prophecies have become internet sensations, but when journalists have investigated, they've found that most of her specific predictions only appeared in print after the events occurred. There's little verifiable evidence she made these predictions beforehand, and many of the predictions attributed to her are actually invented or embellished by tabloid newspapers looking for sensational content. This brings me to perhaps the most important point. The prophecy industry is exactly that, an industry. Books about Nostradamus still sell millions of copies. Websites about ancient prophecies generate significant advertising revenue. TV specials about doomsday predictions draw huge audiences. There's a strong financial incentive to keep these prophecies alive and to make them seem as credible as possible, even when the evidence says otherwise. I want to be clear about something. I'm not suggesting we dismiss ancient wisdom entirely. Our ancestors were just as intelligent as we are, and many ancient texts contain profound insights into human nature and society. But there's a difference between respecting ancient wisdom and uncritically accepting claims about prophetic powers. We honor our ancestors more by carefully examining their words in their proper historical context than by twisting them to fit our modern preconceptions. So where does this leave us? If these famous prophecies about humanity's end don't hold up to scrutiny, should we stop worrying about existential threats altogether? Absolutely not. The difference is that today, our concerns should be based on scientific evidence and observable trends, not ancient texts. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence risks. These are real challenges that deserve our serious attention. But addressing them requires clear thinking based on evidence, not fear based on misinterpreted prophecies. What I find most empowering about debunking these prophecy myths is the realization that the future is unwritten. There is no inevitable script that humanity must follow. The future remains open, shaped by the choices we collectively make today. Rather than passively accepting a predetermined fate supposedly foretold centuries ago, we can actively work to create the future we want to see. Isn't that actually more inspiring than believing we're bound to some ancient prediction? I hope this journey through history's most famous prophecies has been eye-opening for you. It's natural to feel a bit disappointed when learning that stories we found fascinating aren't quite what they seemed. But I believe there's something more valuable than the temporary thrill of a good doomsday prophecy. And that's understanding our actual human history, with all its complexity, creativity, and yes, its tendency to rewrite the past to serve present needs. If you've enjoyed this deeper look at historical prophecies and want more content that separates historical fact from fiction, I'd love to have you join our community. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you do not miss our next deep dive into history's most persistent myths. We're on this journey of discovery together, and each video aims to give you insights you can confidently share with friends and family. Which of these prophecy revelations surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and if there are other historical mysteries you'd like me to explore, I'm all ears. Until next time, remember, the most powerful prediction tool isn't an ancient prophecy, but your own informed, critical thinking.